So we have some important news in the current efforts to remove the remaining restrictions on suppressors and a critical challenge aiming to strike down state bans on those items, essentially getting rid of state bans on suppressors. This is in direct response to the new NFA $0 tax change, which is currently now in effect. So let's break down what is happening in this critical case. Now, before we jump into this video, if you guys want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to subscribe. Also, double check to make sure YouTube has not unsubscribed you. And I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is 1st Phorm. 1st Phorm is an amazing company. They're pro-America, pro-freedom, pro-2A. They support what we talk about here on the channel, but also they have amazing supplements. So if maybe you have a New Year's resolution, if you're like me trying to get in the gym more, check them out. You can use a link down below. And right now, if you use that link and you order any supplements, you can get a free 5-pack of protein sticks. So as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we need to talk about what is happening right now in response to the Big Beautiful Bill and the new $0 NFA tax change, which is currently in effect. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while, you will know that HR 1 passed, and in that, we only got a reduction of the NFA tax. Now, under this new law, the NFA tax on items like suppressors and SBRs was reduced from $200 to now $0, and that is currently now in effect. However, the fight against the NFA is far from over. In response to the new $0 tax change and that law change, there have been multiple lawsuits that have now been launched to get rid of all of the remaining NFA restrictions, getting rid of the registration and transfer requirements on SBRs, SBSs, and suppressors. Currently, there are lawsuits like the GOA, FRAC, Palmetto State Armory, Silencer Co., and 15-state lawsuit against the ATF down in the Northern District of Texas. However, there is another lawsuit that is very critical, and it's been launched in direct response to state bans on suppressors. This lawsuit here that we're going to be talking about aims to leverage the positive NFA movement that we've been getting to essentially eliminate suppressor bans in multiple states, and they're going directly against the state of New Jersey and their ban on suppressors. This case is titled Padua versus Platkin, and the plaintiffs here are trying to use that recent NFA tax change, the new requirement that there is no tax on these items, and they're trying to use that as a mechanism to open a new challenge to remove these state bans on suppressors. Now, the ultimate goal of this lawsuit is to allow everyone in America, no matter what state you're in, to be able to finally own and purchase and possess and use suppressors. Now, in this lawsuit, SAF argues that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Under this constitutional provision, the peaceable citizens of this nation have a fundamental, constitutionally guaranteed right to keep and bear common arms for the defense of self and family and for all other lawful pursuits. Indeed, the federal government has now conceded that suppressors are entitled to Second Amendment protections. So they're citing directly to the Fifth Circuit Peterson challenge, where you had the Trump DOJ admit that suppressors are in fact protected arms, and as protected arms, they have two-way protections. They go on to argue in this case that as a result, the federal government has insisted a ban on the possession of suppressors, like the state's ban here, would be unconstitutional. So there also in the Peterson case, you had the Trump DOJ concede that not only are suppressors protected arms, but that they cannot be outright banned either by the federal government or by any state. They then go on to argue that the laws in New Jersey criminalize suppressors despite the fact that they are in common use, and they argue that suppressors have been broadly permitted and commonly used for over 100 years. They point out that suppressors are widely permitted throughout the United States, and a majority of the states, almost every state, has suppressors. Individuals and residents within those states can own and possess and use those items as long as they're, within the NFA's restrictions. And, the Big Beautiful Bill also reduced the $0 tax, which is also going to explode the common use and ownership of these items. And it's only really an outlier of jurisdictions in states that are outright banning these items. Importantly, they also point out in this challenge that suppressors are widely permitted, not just within the United States, but also around the world. So not only is there clear common use in the US, but outside also there is clear, common use. Many nations actually don't even have regulations on these items at all. They concluded the complaint by asking for the court to declare that the ban on these commonly possessed suppressors violates the right to keep and bear arms, and they asked for the court to permanently enjoin the state of New Jersey and any of its officers or agents from enforcing this suppressor ban. Now, the state of New Jersey has responded to this challenge, and the state's core position is kind of a procedural, position and very defensive. It largely refuses to actually engage with the merits of this case as framed by SAF and the other plaintiffs, and instead they characterize most of the complaint as legal conclusions rather than factual allegations. In fact, over and over, the state of New Jersey responds by referring the court here to the actual text of the statute, cases, and then also some articles, and they deny that any constitutional violation has occurred, and they assert that they have any lack of knowledge that the alleged harms are happening to the individuals within the state. The state of New Jersey flatly denies that New Jersey here is violating the Second Amendment or the 14th Amendment and demands dismissal of this case with prejudice, and they argue that the plaintiffs are not entitled to any declaratory or injunctive relief or really any relief at all. It also claims that the plaintiffs lack standing, that the claims are unripe, and that the complaint fails to state a valid legal claim, and they say that that lays the legal groundwork to actually dismiss this case with prejudice, even before any factual record is developed in this case. So in essence, New Jersey asked for the court here to not even really look at the merits of this case or really look at this issue, but instead just outright dismiss it right here and now. So this is a very important challenge. We have already seen that GOA and other organizations have filed, challenges down in the federal district courts in Texas to remove the remaining NFA restrictions in light of the $0 tax change that's now in effect. But now you also have SAF and the NRA and other, groups in this lawsuit up in New Jersey, aiming to essentially get rid of state bans on these items as well. This is kind of a two-pronged attack in response to the One Big Beautiful Bill and the $0 tax change that's now in effect. This challenge is very important also for someone like me because, I live in a state like California where we have an outright ban on these items as well. We can't get NFA items, we can't get suppressors or SBRs. So if this case were to move forward and actually win, it would open the door for other state bans on these items to also go away. And then also for us, residents in states like California to be able to enjoy the $0 tax as well that everybody else is enjoying right now in response to the One Big Beautiful Bill. But also, I think one of the critical things with the One Big Beautiful Bill and the reduction of the $0, tax, taking it to $0 is the fact that it's going to be very hard for states like New Jersey and California to argue that these items are not in common use because the ownership is now going to explode as a result of the $0 tax. So a really solid case, and now we're going to be waiting to see, how does this challenge develop and move forward. I would also suspect that maybe in this case, you would see the Trump DOJ jump in support of striking down the state suppressor ban. The Trump DOJ already stated in the Peterson case that they do not believe that a state cannot just outright ban the ownership of suppressors, and to do so would be unconstitutional. So it would be interesting to see if the Trump DOJ actually supports that position, jumps into this case, because that would be kind of the perfect case for them to, make that position even more resolute and support getting rid of a state suppressor ban. So that's what's currently going on in this new suppressor challenge, trying to get rid of a state ban on suppressors in light of the $0 tax change that happened. As we get more information, as it develops more, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.